Hi everyone, this is Jason Zach from Nathaniel School of Music. We are going to dedicate an entire tutorial, this one, to the study of 7th chords. We are going to look at how to form them theoretically, and we are going to look at how to play them practically on an instrument like the piano or whichever instrument that you might be playing at the moment. Okay, 7th chords, there are a few of them which are taught in the basics of chord theory, or rather diatonic chord theory. So in the major scale you have a set of them, in the minor scale you have a set of them. However, in the minor scale you have the natural minor, you have the harmonic minor, you have the melodic minor, you even have the Dorian, you have modes and so on. So it's a bit difficult to remember them diatonically. So I thought this lesson can be dedicated to exploring each and every chord, not from the perspective of the scale, but from the perspective of triads and intervals. So the triads that we are going to look at as a base, as a home base, would be the major chord, the minor chord, the augmented chord, and the diminished chord. And also, not to leave behind the suspended chord, more so the sus4. Okay, so repeat: major, minor, diminished, augmented, suspended. So for the entirety of the tutorial, we look at forming 7th chords from the key of D. However, in our staff notation, which you'll find on our Patreon page, you'll get access to other keys as well. We leave a few there, and we will try and make this as exhaustive as possible. We look at 7th chords which are not commonly found, which are not even in scales to begin with. So yeah, we look at the ones from diatonic to far beyond. Okay, so stay tuned till the very end, and get yourselves a book. Pen, paper would help, and also get your keyboards or guitar or whichever instrument you play and learn along. Or don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon for regular notifications. Let's get cracking. So the key of D. Let's first look at all the triads from within the key of D. I said it earlier, but let's break it down. So major, D major. Okay, it's also essential at this stage to crack the inversions of that particular triad. So D major root position will start on the root D. Then you start on the first inversion, namely F sharp, A, D, and then the second inversion, A, D, F sharp. Okay, that's your D major bass, and I call it a D major bass because from here we'll build all the respective 7th chords. Okay, now coming to D minor. So D minor would be root, minor third, perfect fifth. You need to remember your perfect fifths, well, all of these intervals really, minor third, perfect fifth, while a major chord was a major third and a perfect fifth. So minor third again, minor third, perfect fifth. Okay, so this is D minor, again formulated in all the inversions. Root position, first inversion, second inversion. So first inversion will have the root note at the top, in this case D. Second inversion will have the root in the middle, again D. So that's D minor. Then we have D augmented. So an augmented chord would be formed as a major with a sharp 5. Now that's one way to remember an augmented chord, but what I like to think of when I'm looking at augmented would be, it's just 2 major thirds. So a good way to form chords would be to not rely on some other chord. It's the same issue with notes in music. We tend to be biased towards one note, let's say C, in a lot of the learning examples people give us. It's the same issue with chords. We base it on something we already know, like a major chord, while an augmented chord can so easily be formed via two major thirds. So root, major third, and then from F sharp another major third. And it's interesting to know that all augmented chords are inversions of each other. So D augmented, F sharp augmented, B flat augmented. So there are three augmented chords which are just inversions of each other. Okay, that's about your augmented. Another way to look at it is you take the 5 perfect fifth and you raise it up a half step or up one chromatic note, and you get the augmented chord. Okay, coming to diminished, it's very similar. So coming to diminished, you take a minor chord and you drop the fifth down to a diminished fifth or a tritone interval. So minor chord, drop it down, you get yourself a tritone interval or a diminished fifth, and this is a diminished chord. And the way I like to remember a diminished chord would be two minor thirds. D to F minor third, F to A flat, again minor third. So there we go. So diminished, augmented, major, minor. And one more to go, the suspension. So a suspended triad would be 1 perfect fourth and perfect fifth. A perfect fourth could be looked at as a major third up a chromatic step. Na, 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 na. Now, another way to look at the perfect fourth is it's a circle of fifths counterclockwise neighbor. So D is there, C, G, D, D, G will be a perfect fourth, while D, A would be a perfect fifth. Clockwise neighbor, perfect fifth. Counterclockwise neighbor, perfect fourth. Okay, so you combine a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth and you get a suspension. And the good thing about a suspended chord, D sus 4, when you invert it, will be G sus 2. So D sus 4 is G sus 2. And if you further invert that and start on the A, you will get an A quartal chord. It's kind of an A7 sus 4 sound, but we call it as A quartal with a Q sign. Okay, so suspended chords, when you invert them, they become other chords. So D sus 4 becomes G sus 2, becomes A quartal. So these are all the basic triads. So that's over and done with. Now let's try and form all of the 7th chords from the triads, okay, having known the triads. So the first kind of 7th chords would be keeping the major triad as a bass triad. So we'll start with D major and try to build up all the 7th chords in and around it, okay? And we are going to build it up by using extended intervals. So the extended intervals would be major 7th and the minor 7th. The other kinds of intervals would be interval modifications, and usually when we form 7th chords, we would be modifying not the third, we'll be modifying not the root, but we'll be modifying the fifth. And two ways to modify the fifth. This is your fifth, A, perfect fifth. You can go sharp 5 or you can do flat 5. So you can have a D major with a sharp 5, which is essentially a D augmented. Or you could have a D major with a flat 5, which is essentially, well, there's no name for it. I actually call it the Simpsons chord, come to think of it. But anyway, so that'll be a D major flat 5. You can even say it has a Lydian sound or a Lydian vibe. Okay, so in addition to the extended intervals, we'll also modify or we'll do replacements of the perfect 5 to either be a diminished 5 or an augmented 5. So thus it will give us 4 7th chords with a major bass triad. So let's form them real quick. D major plus a major 7th. What will be a major 7th? An easy way to remember it would be octave minus 1. So D minus 1. The reason why it's useful to remember it that way is whichever shape you are, whichever position you are on your instrument, if you already know D major, you're just finding the additional note, which in this case is D minus 1, or root or octave minus 1, which happens to be C sharp. What do we mean by minus 1 again? Minus 1 step. We use terms like semitone and tone, which are honestly quite confusing to me. So just down a chromatic step, or down 2 chromatic steps, or up 1, or up 2. It's easier to remember that way. So you take a triad, down 1, and see, you can get a major 7th flavor from any inversion. Or you take the second inversion, and now you're stacking up C sharp. So the major 7th of D is C sharp. You should remember that. There we go. Okay. So it's essentially built via the major chord plus the major 7th. So D major plus major 7th. Or if you play D major like this plus major 7th. Yeah. Now coming to the next extension, you have the minor 7th interval. So there are 3 7th intervals in music. You have a major 7th, which is octave minus 1. You have a minor 7th, which is octave minus 2. You also have, which we are going to look at shortly, a diminished 7th, which is octave minus 3. So diminished 7th is where the major 7th comes down, becomes minor. And the minor comes down again, it becomes diminished. So we use a diminished 7th sparingly for a few chords, namely the diminished 7th chord, which is that. More on that soon. So if you take the major D major chord and you stack up, now we've looked at a major 7th, forms a major 7th chord. If you stack up a minor 7th, it becomes a D 7th chord, or you can, a bigger way to call it would be a D dominant 7th chord. Okay. The notes would be 1, 3, 5, 7 flat. So if you're here, in this inversion, you'll have to add the C. La da da da, la da da da. That one. Or if you're here, la da da da, la da C A C D F sharp. There we go. That'll be a D dominant 7th. Okay. So we've looked at D major 7th, D dominant 7th. Now let's modify the 5. Let's keep that major 7th shape. And now you have a lot of options. You can do D major 7th sharp 5. Okay. Also known as a D augmented major 7th. Because this is a major 7th, major 7 sharp 5, but major chord with a sharp 5 itself is called augmented. So you can either call this as D major 7 sharp 5, or you can call it as D augmented major 7th. I repeat, D major 7 sharp 5 or D augmented major 7th. So we've messed with the 5 by sharpening it. Now let's mess with the 5 by flattening it. Now this is a unique chord. This is called D major 7th flat 5. Okay. Beautiful chord. Very Lydian in nature. There we go. So we've altered the 5 with relation to a major 7th bass. Now let's alter the 5 with relation to a dominant 7th bass. That will be a minor 7th up top. So the same story, you can do a sharp 5. So D7 sharp 5 would be the chord. Sharp 5 means A goes to A sharp. So this is called as a D7 sharp 5, also known as a D augmented 7th. So you go D augmented 7th, D augmented 7, or D7 sharp 5, D7 sharp 5. And similarly, you can have a D7 flat 5. So this is your D7th, vanilla D dominant 7th. You sharpen it, D7 sharp 5, flatten it, you get a D7 flat 5. That's literally the chord. I don't think there's any other name for this chord. If you think there is, let me know in the comments. So D7 flat 5. So we've now built up every major triad based 7th chord. And there were 6, if I remember right? Major 7th, dominant 7th. Then you have the messing up of the 5 with the major 7. So major 7 sharp 5, also known as augmented major 7. Then major 7 flat 5. Then you have 7 sharp 5, which is also called as augmented 7th. And then 7 flat 5, which is just 7 flat 5. That's it. So now let's do the same ecosystem with the minor triad bass. So if you take D minor, same story as earlier, you extend it with first of all the 7s. What are the 2 types of 7s in life? Major 7th, minor 7th. And there we have it. So what are these 2 chords called? You take a minor triad with a major 7th, it will be called D minor major 7th. Weird name, you have to deal with it. D minor major 7th. Okay, and the traditional way to write it would be, you write DM with a major 7th in brackets to avoid confusion. So D, you can see my notes. D minor major 7th. So essentially, even if you're here, F A D in an inversion, you're just adding in that C sharp. Or if you're here, if you're here, okay, that's a minor major 7th. Then if you take D minor with a flat 7, remember major 7, flat 7. Flat 7 would be D minor 7th. Traditional D minor 7th. Okay. And now let's mess with the 5s. So I leave the flattening of the 5 for the later one, because that will actually be a diminished triad extension. Because when you take a D minor and flatten the 5, it's already a diminished, as I taught you earlier. So we look at D minor 7th with a sharp 5. Very uplifting kind of chord. You could also call it as a B flat add 9/D, or you can visualize it as a D minor 7th sharp 5. You could also say add flat 6, but we have it named as a D minor 7 sharp 5. Right, so those are your minor extensions, minor triad extensions. Let's now look at the diminished extensions. So you already know D diminished by now. We looked at it earlier, right? D, F, A flat. And the same story as earlier. We are going to do D diminished with a major 7th, D diminished with a minor 7th, but we'll also add D diminished with a diminished 7th, which is 3, root minus 3. So you go, this would be D diminished major 7th. So you write D dim in brackets major 7th. D diminished major 7th. Rare chord though. Okay, then we have D minor 7 flat 5. Now there are 2 names for it. You can either say D minor 7 flat 5, which is a very obvious way of forming it. It's easy on the brain, I think, even though it's a big name. D minor 7th, which is this, flat 5. D minor 7 flat 5. But officially we also have a term called, this is D half diminished. So D half diminished. So you can either say D half diminished or D minor 7 flat 5. D minor 7th, D minor 7 flat 5, also known as D half diminished. Okay, and then in addition to this, you have a D fully diminished chord. which is a diminished chord plus a diminished 7th. So a diminished chord plus a major 7th is diminished major 7th. A diminished chord plus a minor 7th is a D minor 7 flat 5, also known as half diminished, D half diminished. A diminished chord plus a diminished 7th would be a fully diminished or a D diminished 7th in this case. And it's interesting to note that all diminished 7th chords are inversions of each other. So D diminished 7th, if you invert it, you get F diminished 7th. You invert that, you get G sharp or A flat diminished 7th. You invert that, you get B diminished 7th. There we go. We've done a proper comparison and contrast between the two chords. Check it out in the description. Also, I've made a playlist way back in the day where we actually made a playlist of, as I call it, my favorite chords of all time. So the minor 7 flat 5 is definitely there. The minor major 7th is definitely there. A lot of these chords will be there. So imagine an entire YouTube video on just one chord. That's what you're going to find in the description. Check it out. So diminished chords are over and done with. Now let's look at the augmented setup. So augmented we already learnt earlier when we built it via the major and the dominant 7th chords. But nevertheless, I'll just bring it out there as a formality. So this is your D augmented major 7th. You can also say D major 7 sharp 5. We discussed this earlier. I've just put it in a different topic. Okay, then we have D augmented 7th. So when we say D 7th, it actually means flat 7. When we say D major 7th and write that Maj, M-A-J, then it means major 7th. But if we don't write anything, D 7th, it means minor 7th. Okay. So similarly, D augmented 7th would imply you have a minor 7th with an augmented chord. So augmented chord with a flat 7. So augmented chords are done, and then we will get into the naming of these chords with symbols and all that just at the end of the lecture. But before that, let's finish off suspended chords, which I like a lot. So D major, first of all, to get it to be suspended, this is sus 4. So D sus 4. So same old story, D major 7th, sus 4. Which is a suspended triad plus a major 7th. Beautiful chord, especially when you arpeggiate it. So that's D major 7 sus 4, major 7th, and now we have D7 sus 4, which is a sus chord with a minor 7th up top. Okay, D7 sus 4, D major 7 sus 4. So let's now revise whatever we've studied so far. Let's break down all the 7 chords. But while revising it, let's also understand all the symbols that are used. This can get a bit challenging because different symbols are used by different musicians for different genres, I guess you could say that. So yeah, let's take ourselves back to the major extensions. Major 7th, you can call it as D Maj 7. You don't write D major 7. No. D Maj 7. Maj 7. Or you can write D Ma 7. Ma 7 if you want. Or you can write D equilateral triangle 7. Okay. D triangle 7 if you want. Or there are some people who will do D triangle. That's it. So Maj 7, Ma 7, triangle 7, only triangle, right? I hope there's nothing else. But we are in luck when it comes to the D7th chord. That's all you'll ever write, D7, because it's an ancient chord. It's been used from the time of Bach. So it's just that, D7th. That's it. Okay. Then D major 7 flat 5, you can write it as D Maj 7 flat 5. That's usually the tradition. Or D Maj 7 sharp 5, you can do it like that. And then if you do the dominant 7s with the altered 5s, you can do D7 flat 5, D7 sharp 5. And remember what I said, whenever you have a sharp 5, you can also refer to it as augmented. And the way the symbols work is, whenever you write anything that is augmented in nature, that is a major chord with a sharp 5, you can also write, instead of writing D aug 7 or D Aug major 7, you can write instead of the word Aug, you can replace AUG with a plus sign. The plus sign you write usually at the top right of the capital letter of that root. So D augmented major 7th could be written down as D plus triangle 7 because a triangle is for major, right? Or you can just make it easy for yourself and say D major 7 sharp 5 or D augmented major 7th. So to write D augmented major 7th, probably you can write D aug in brackets major 7th. Okay, so or D plus major 7th. Plus means augmented always. Okay, then we have D augmented 7th, which as I told you earlier is like a D7 sharp 5. So that would be augmented. So D plus 7. D plus sign 7. Okay, so that's about your major and augmented extensions. Now let's look at minor and diminished. Okay, so minor, first of all, minor 7th, pretty easy. D small m 7, small m for minor. Now minor chords could also be replaced. That m, you can replace it by writing minus sign, probably to save paper. It's a smaller, easier thing to write. So you write that minus sign on top right again of the alphabet. So minor has a minus, augmented has a plus. Okay, and as we'll see with diminished, it has a degree sign. So minor will have a minus. So you can write D minus 7 or you can write D M7, small m7, not big M, small m. Okay, then D minor major 7th would be D M small m in brackets Maj 7. So D minor major 7, that major 7 should be in brackets, or you can perhaps also go D minus triangle 7. That could also work. D minus triangle 7. Okay, that's D minor major 7. Okay, then you have your minor 7 sharp 5, which is as it's written, DM7 sharp 5. Diminished major 7th. Now for diminished, you can write D degree. Any kind of diminished chord, any triad especially, you can either write D dim or D degree. Both work. So D diminished major 7th in brackets, D dim Maj 7. Now this gets interesting. D minor 7th flat 5, you can write it as it's called, D M7 flat 5. You can write it peacefully like that. So D small m7 flat 5. But if that's a bit long to write, especially in a chord chart with a lot of changes, you can do D and phi, the Greek symbol phi. So D phi, used in maths class, right? So that and that, or I don't know exactly how it's drawn. There are a lot of ways. So D minor 7 flat 5 or D phi, but officially you call it D half diminished. Okay. And then D fully diminished would be D degree 7. D degree 7, or you can write D dim 7. D diminished 7 or D degree 7. Okay, and yeah, that's about all the symbols. Yeah, you have the suspensions. So D major 7 sus 4 or D7 sus 4. D7 sus 4. Sus 4, there's no shorter way of writing it. So D Maj 7 sus 4 or D7 sus 4. So I've explored everything on D. We will write this down on a couple more roots in our staff notation PDF sheet, which is available for you on our Patreon page. You can also download the MIDI files of that and play it and actually hear how it sounds as a good revision. You will also have the MuseScore files, so you can import it and transpose it and play around with the data a bit more if you want to, or share it around or print it or whatever you wish. And you also have my handwritten notes as I've been going through in the lecture, all on our Patreon. And if you like the video, it'll be nice if you can consider hitting the like button. There's a subscribe also somewhere there. Try to hit it and turn on the bell icon for regular notifications. Also feel free to share the video with your friends, family, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd like us to cover in the next one. Thanks a ton for watching the video. I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.